All right, hello and welcome into another edition of 8Sports Nightcap here on WRIC.com, on WRIC Now, on our Facebook page, on our YouTube. Thanks so much for tuning in. Last week, obviously, we did not have a show. I was under the weather, and it's just been so crazy, so we kind of missed some of the Super Bowl action. That was a lot of fun. I'm sure everyone enjoyed their Super Bowl parties, and obviously the Eagles take it home. But if you've not joined in on an 8Sports Nightcap before, it's just kind of a recap show of what happened this past weekend, kind of a preview of what's going on this week in Central Virginia sports, and obviously the center of attention right now for, I think, just about everyone in Richmond is VCU basketball. Are they going to make the NCAA tournament? Are they going to be left out on the bubble as they have been so often, it seems, in recent history? And they have two big matchups this week at home, both sellouts as they host UMass tomorrow at 6 p.m., and then they will host George Mason for first place in the A10 on Saturday this weekend at 4 p.m. So some big games in the world of VCU basketball, on top of the fact that basketball season is winding down. The start of the spring sports season has started as the University of Richmond men's and women's lacrosse teams have started. VCU lacrosse has started, and of course VCU baseball and Richmond baseball has gotten underway as well this past weekend. And so busy time of year for sports. High school basketball, they're winding down. Region tournaments were supposed to start this weekend. I think because of the weather that we're having, we might see those region tournaments get pushed back a little bit. So we got a crazy into the basketball season with all the weather, probably more snow than we're used to having here in Richmond from years past and whatnot, but a busy time to say the least, especially with spring sports starting. But to start the show this week, we're going to change things up a little bit and invite on a colleague of mine, and of course that is Nia McMillan. Hello, thank you much for joining us today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
You ready for the snow?
Having me, Nolan. No, but it's coming.
Yeah, you just gotta kind of have to deal with it. If you're wondering why we're having Nia on, she is a recent addition to our team here at WRIC as a web producer. When did you join us exactly?
I joined near the end of January, so January 22nd.
Yeah, so less than a month. We're approaching the 1 month. You're still here. You like us enough. But the reason you're on our sports show today is because you do have a sports background, and what has now become a tradition is that whenever we have someone with a sports background, we invite them on the show and kind of pick their brain about what it was like to be an athlete, because like me and just about most sports fans, none of us were athletic enough to compete at that level. And you, of course, have a background. What's your background in the world of sports?
I do. So my background was as a member of the women's track and field team at VCU. Go Rams.
Go Rams.
So yeah, that is my background in sports. I competed there for 3 years. I did the 400, the 200, the 4x4 relay, as well
as... Oh, my goodness.
as well as the 400-meter hurdles. In my last year, I did that. So adopted a completely different event group than I had before.
And what was that, indoor and outdoor track?
Yes, it was both.
And what do you think your best event was?
Oh, geez. So I definitely think the 400 was my best event, considering I had been running that since middle school. However, I surprised myself and my coaches with my ability to run the 400-meter hurdles.
There you are right there.
Yeah, and there I saw that. I was surprised. I was like, oh, there's definitely a picture in there that I done, which is that one. But yeah, that was my last conference, actually, right there. It doesn't look like it in that shot, but the weather at that meet was terrible. It was 40 degrees, mind you, this is spring. Yeah. So everything was promised and hopeful to be warm. It was 40 degrees and it was raining. Needless to say, nobody was happy running. But we made do and we did the best that we could.
Yeah, we're going to have to start a running podcast here. As some of our loyal viewers of this show know, we had Tannick Blair on our executive web producer. I don't know his exact title. In fact, he's producing today's show. Oh, yep. But he was on. He ran cross country at St. Louis. Did you ever do any cross country, like maybe back in high school? Or?
So they tried to recruit me for cross country. I did cross country training in high school to help prepare me for the 400, and it was brutal. Yeah. It was brutal. So hats off to anyone that runs cross country. Your endurance is beyond compare.
We actually have some. I was a 4x4 runner in high school. I'm sure you're from the 757 area as well, I believe so. I'm sure we both spent plenty of hours inside the Boo Williams Sportsplex. Sitting.
Boo Williams. No, that brings back so many memories.
Did you run the 4x4 in high school?
I did.
Oh, so you know all about sitting around. If you don't know, if you're not familiar with track and field, I did triple jump in 4x4. So triple jump's the first event of the entire day. And then I would sit around for, I think, like 5 or 6 hours to then run the 4x4, which is the last event of the day. So you know all about, but all your other friends get picked up, they leave.
Oh, absolutely.
You're sitting around waiting.
Absolutely. Anyone who does field events knows that they come and they go. Anybody who runs and also does field events, because I used to long jump in middle school, so you were there from the beginning all the way until the end, and my mom was like, why can't you just not run the 4x4? Why can't you just opt to run the 4x1? Why couldn't you do something different? And I was like, ask the coach.
I know. I mean, God bless my mother. She sat there for I mean, she was there for 6 hours. I'm sure she's watching back at home. So thanks, Mom, for sitting at the Boo Williams Sportsplex.
And shout out to my mom as well. Thank you for sitting through all of those track meets.
Yeah, but fast forward, I would like to talk about your time as an athlete at VCU, because I think, we have a lot of viewers that obviously tune in for VCU baseball and basketball and whatnot. What was your experience like as an athlete at VCU?
My experience was like no other, especially coming in during COVID at the height of the pandemic. It was very interesting just to see how my time at the end was, after I graduated versus the beginning. But it was fun nonetheless. We competed at so many different states. I like to say on Sunday we would be in Florida, and then by next Wednesday we were competing at Texas Relays. So it was an experience that I wouldn't change for the world. It taught me a lot about time management. If you're a student athlete, especially in college, you know all too well about time management. So it was a great experience.
And I'm sure you've made a lot of friends over, the years in track and field and stuff.
Absolutely.
That went to different universities, whether that was in the A-10 or somewhere else in Virginia. How do you think VCU compares competitively to putting together a student-athlete experience that can compete with, some of the bigger schools?
I think that it does a really good job of bringing in people from all around. Some of my teammates, I had one, she was from New Orleans. I actually had two from New Orleans. I had one from St. Louis, Maryland. Then we had kids from the 7-5 and then locally in Richmond. So I think that them bringing in different talent from all different areas helps surprise competition, because we are a D1 school, but when we go to places like Texas Relays or down to Florida, our throwers competed at the University of Florida, Florida Gators, and out through a lot of SEC athletes. So I just think that because of the talent that we recruit from all around the U.S., we're a good surprise to competition. Keep them on their toes. Yeah,
it seems like VCU Athletics is in a really good spot with the recent success of a lot of their different of their teams. With that said, when I had to pull you up because I used to do play-by-play, so I know how to find these people. They tell me I'm a D1 athlete. I'm finding your bio immediately.
I know, you surprised me just then when you pulled up my profile. I was like, oh, there it goes.
Yeah, and it says here you had over a 4.0 in high school.
I did.
So I'm sure you had plenty of schools offering you. What were some of the other schools that maybe you were looking at, and then what made you decide to come here to Richmond and go to VCU?
So I kept it local, tuition, especially at the time of the pandemic. I was like, well, let me just keep it local. But I was also looking at UVA. I was looking at Virginia Tech. They have a good track and field program and a really good bank track. I ran a few PRs there. So I was looking at those two primarily. And then, I hate to say it, but the University of Richmond. But the Rams prevailed, and I'm happy that this is where I started my journey.
Yeah, and you like playing violin in your free time?
Yeah.
do you still pull out the old violin?
So, yes, I actually recently just got my violin tuned and fixed up. But, yes, I played the violin all the way from 5th grade to when I graduated high school.
There you go.
So,
I was also an orchestra kid. So
see, the athlete to orchestra kid pipeline,
I played the double bass. So.
Oh, yeah, you lugged around a very,
well, it was
very
more so I stood in the back and goofed off with my friends.
Right.
Helped my grade point average. That's for sure. But we're talking about here in a second VCU basketball and their quest to make the NCAA tournament. And one of the things, for me being from afar and watching VCU and being aware of what the product was, the one thing I knew that VCU known for was their fans. And now that I've been on the sidelines and I've been at these games, my expectations for VCU was that they had a great fan base. I have still been blown away by the support of the VCU faithful, of the support at the Siegel Center. You know, do you have any favorite memories from when you were a student of going to games and rooting on the Rams?
I did. So I went to games as an athlete sometimes. You know, when the women's track and field team would win the A-10 championships, they would bring us out on the floor, and you know, we would interact with the fans. And I threw a couple of T-shirts, up in the crowd. But I think my favorite memory was just as a student. We were there, really, really high stakes game. I think it was to get into the playoffs, I want to say, and they threw T-shirts. I won a T-shirt, and we won in the last quarter in the stadium. Like, I have never seen the arena erupt like that. It was great.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for stopping by, everyone.
Of course.
This was Nina. She's been helping out with our web, and she's been doing a great job, and wanted to have her on and kind of talk about her background as a VCU athlete and give us a kind of a breakdown.
Yes.
You know, last question for you. You know, NIL, I feel like you were just missed out on all the fun with this kind of stuff.
I did. And I think about it all the time. I'm like, you know, being a student athlete, you know, you're not able to work, you know, many jobs. So I'm like, man, NIL would have been great. I had one teammate, and he kind of got the tail end of it.
Yeah.
I know I think it's like an electrolyte sports drink, and we drink it all the time. But he partnered with them briefly. But yeah, I'm so sad that I missed the tail end.
You kind of got the short end of the stick on it.
I really
COVID
did.
Coming in, and then you just missed out on.
It's like the baton. I almost had it, and then I didn't.
That's great. All right. Well, thanks so much, Nia, and
Thank you for
appreciate you
me.
for stopping by. All right. Well, let's change gears a little bit here and talk just that VCU basketball, because we are expecting a great game tomorrow at UMass. And yes, they're having a game. I know we've talked a lot about the snow recently and how it could impact this game. And right now, it's all systems go for VCU. They're expecting to have a sellout crowd, not only tomorrow, but on Saturday when they host George Mason. And for this past week, VCU has actually been off. They had their bye week, and it kind of came at a perfect time because they've been on the road so much, especially since the start of the new year. And ever since then, they've kind of been playing incredible. Even the fact that they've been on the road, they've won 10 of their last 11. They're on a 4-game win streak, and they enter tomorrow as heavy favorites. And I think everyone's expecting them to kind of take care of business against UMass. I think we'll be pretty surprised if the Minutemen can come into the Siegel Center on a snow day where everyone's excited because they probably had the whole day off from work. They'll walk over from their downtown apartments and root for the Rams. So I'm expecting a pretty good showing tomorrow. I think what's more interesting probably out of this matchup this week is, of course, the game on trying to get in my videos here, is the game coming up this Saturday. It's going to be a sellout crowd as VCU hosts George Mason. That's going to be for first place in the A-10. That game will decide who is the top seed in the A-10 tournament in Washington, D.C. In the middle of March. Of course, the last time they were at home, they were hosting LaSalle. That's what these highlights are from my vantage point. And that was a dominating performance. That's kind of what I'm expecting to see tomorrow night against UMass. Again, little different that game. Tomorrow's going to tip at 6 p.m. So be sure to get there early, get there loud. If you got the day off from work, you'll have plenty of time to walk over. I'll be there on the sidelines. We'll have a full game report of their matchup against UMass at 11 o'clock, and then at 6 o'clock, I'll kind of give an update and a preview, even though the game would have already started at that point. But, I mean, that guy right there, Max Shulga, he's been the backbone of this team, and it's been incredible to watch this run. What's frustrating to me personally is the fact that they're not getting the respect I think they deserve. I don't think the A-10 is getting the respect that they deserve. Take a look here at what Joe Lunardi currently has as of, this was yesterday's standing, so things could have changed a little bit, but they have VCU right here as the first 4 out. If you're not familiar with that terminology, if the NCAA tournament selection show was tomorrow and everyone's standings stood as they were, George Mason was the automatic qualifier in the A-10, it would be VCU home upset that they didn't get into the tournament. So they're right on that cusp, along with, 16 other teams that are on the bubble. And the fact that VCU is not not in, I think is a disrespect to the A-10. George Mason's been incredible. Dayton's been good. They're the lone quad one win for VCU at this point. And St. Louis is a really good team. And I think the problem with the A-10 right now is the cellar of it's not very good. UMass, LaSalle, Richmond, Fordham. I mean, they've had some really tough stretches, and I think that's kind of bringing everyone else down because the A-10's competitive enough that Fordham and Richmond and UMass can get a win over St. Bonaventure, over St. Louis, and that's kind of messing everyone's strength of schedule up is because I think the bottom of the A-10 is able to compete with the top, and because of that, we're finding this situation where VCU has 20 wins with 6 games to go. They already have 20 wins, and they're not secure in the bubble. The one headline that Lenardi does have here is that Wake Forest, VCU, and Georgia are indistinguishable for the last at-large bids on his board. Now, ESPN goes with Joe Lenardi. That's basically their go-to guy when it comes to this stuff. He's been doing it for a while. He gets it right some of the time. Some of the times he doesn't. I don't think you want to put too much pressure into what Joe Lenardi says. I think if you look at VCU's schedule, what they've been able to do to teams that are quad 2 teams, I don't see how they're not a good team, especially if they take care of business on Saturday against George Mason. But I think the big thing for this, though, is to not overlook UMass. And if you are worried about the snow, I do have what head coach Ryan Odom had to say about that snow and whether or not he thinks it's going to affect the fans or not. And he kind of laughed it off. Remember, he was coaching for Utah State this past season.
This team in the league in terms of their transition. Get to that, obviously, but, we want as many people to – snow games a lot of times are fun. I've been a part of some fun snow games, over the years. And so, it certainly can be fun. Every game was a snow game at Utah State.
Yeah, so he's used to the snow, right? So he's not expecting it to be a big problem, but he is a little worried about what maybe UMass can bring and kind of alluded to the talent that they have on their roster.
This team in the league in terms of their transition offense and tempo that they play with. They're really aggressive on defense. They really offensive rebound, and really get after your glass. The real game begins, if you're able to force a miss and don't give up an easy transition basket, they're really going to go after it.
So there you have it. VCU versus UMass tomorrow at 6 p.m. 8Sports will be there. I'll be there at 6 o'clock for kind of a preview, as I said, even though the games already would have started at that point, and then we'll have a full game recap tomorrow night at 11 o'clock. I'm braving the snow, just like all the fans that are going out there, so looking forward to that. And I am expecting a kind of a lively atmosphere after a snow day, right? No classes, not expecting a good show out from the students. They'll have nothing else to do, and it should be a fun atmosphere out there at the ball at the Siegel Center. All right, changing our kind of focus now to trying to find my browser here, to baseball. That's right. The spring sports season is here, and the Richmond Spiders off to a great start. 4-0 to start the year. They swept Navy at home. This first game was a walk-off, 2-1 over Navy. Won the second game 2-1, and then took the third game on Saturday 9-4. And then today they were at William and Mary, which they won that matchup 12-3 today. They were supposed to play VMI tomorrow. That game has been postponed. They will not be playing tomorrow in the snow, but they did go to William and Mary and won a game today 12-3. With that said, the reason I wanted to bring this game up, because if you might have missed it, this could be the wrong video. No, this is the right picture. Look at this scoreboard. This score went viral this past weekend, 36-22. This was a baseball game. This isn't women's basketball. This isn't basketball. This isn't lacrosse. This is a baseball game. Rhode Island 36, William & Mary 22. William & Mary now off to a struggling start to their season. Clearly pitching is a problem. This game, only a 7-inning game. It was scheduled to go for 9, but it was ended short due to run rule. And honestly, I think they should have kept playing because obviously William & Mary was able to put some runs up. In fact, they had a 14-6 lead in this game, as you can see on your screen there. And then they gave up 17 runs in the 5th inning. This actually was the fourth most scored game in baseball history. NCAA and up. The highest scoring MLB game was only 48. This is, 58. So they well went past what was the MLB record. The NCAA record was 62. So they were just 4 runs off from having the highest scoring baseball game in NCAA history. This, of course, was last week. And then, as mentioned just a moment ago, Richmond, as the show was starting, got a win over William & Mary 12-3. With that said, VCU has also started their season, first year of the Sean Thompson era. He's the youngest head coach in NCAA baseball. According to me, I've done a bunch of research. I can't find anybody else that is younger than Sean Thompson. He played on the team in 2018 to kind of give you context of how young Coach Thompson is. Got his first win on Saturday over Charleston on the road 10-9. But they did fall today at Longwood. Longwood has a first-year head coach as well, and the Lancers get the win on the road at 6-3. Tough start to the year for Sean Thompson. Young coach, he's going to figure it out. And both these teams, both VCU and Richmond, they were picked to win the A-10. So to kind of give you an idea of the expectations going into the seasons, people are expecting VCU to be really good, but remember, they lost over 20 players due to their head coach leaving for Liberty this past offseason. So they probably have some growing pains, but I think they have the bats to be pretty good this year. As for Richmond, off to a 4-0 start. You can't ask for anything better than that. Kind of look forward. They have the UR Invite coming up this weekend as well. Lehigh, Fairfield's both coming to town, and then a big road matchup at NC State. And then later on, look at this matchup coming to Richmond, Penn State, Boston College, Toledo. Should be good baseball coming up here in the next couple of weeks between VCU and Richmond. Obviously, the main storyline of the week, though, VCU versus UMass tomorrow in the snow at 6 p.m., and then George Mason comes down for battle of the first place in the A-10. Huge matchup. If VCU loses it, they probably find themselves outside of the bubble looking in and will have to win out and probably win a couple of games in the A-10 tournament if they lose that game. If they win that game, they're probably in regardless, even if they don't win the A-10 tournament. So they got to... I don't want to say it's a must-win for VCU against George Mason on Saturday, but if they do get in, I think it's basically a lock as long as they don't get upset by Richmond the following Tuesday, or, of course, they have to go on the road to Duquesne, but that should be an easy win for them as well. But that's going to wrap things up for another edition of 8Sports Nightcap. Thanks so much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, I believe that we have Richmond VCU next Tuesday, so I do not think we'll have a show. I will obviously be at the Richmond VCU game. I want to double-check this schedule real quick before I say that. Yeah, next Tuesday, VCU plays Richmond, so we won't have a show next week, but we might have a recap show, depending how close that one is. The Rams travel to Richmond this time. Of course, it was a 50-point win for VCU the last time the Spiders came to the Siegel Center, so we'll see if Richmond can play a little better next Tuesday, February 25th. But that's going to wrap things up for another edition of 8Sports Nightcap. Thanks so much for Nia for stopping by and talking a little VCU track with us, giving an insight on kind of what it's like to be a student athlete at VCU, and then of course be sure to tune in tomorrow for our full coverage of VCU and UMass at the Siegel Center tomorrow night at 11. Tonight at 11, I'm going to sprint over to Virginia Union. They got a matchup against Elizabeth City State tonight. Going to try to get the tail end of those highlights before I grab dinner for the 11 o'clock show. But have a good night, everybody. We will see you next week, hopefully, possibly. I don't want to commit to it. For a VCU Richmond recap. If not, we'll see you the week after. Basketball season's coming to a close. Baseball is here. Good night, everybody. Have a good one.